So how's everyone doing? Great. Yes, I love the work that we do as business owners. I thought I should use a microphone, sorry. So I love the work that we do as business owners. I love the work that our partners do and the investment that they make in us as business owners. As a business owner for 11 years, I'm so appreciative and know that, to come here today and get this information took time out of your businesses, but an investment in yourself and an investment in your business yields such a strong return on investment. So kudos to you all for coming here today. I too would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Camille Blunt and the hard work that she did when she was in that role as a small business owner. I know I rang her quite a bit for help when I had questions and concerns and fears and thoughts and everything, and she was so responsive. And so thank you to Camille and her team for all their hard work. But we also have to give a shout out to Director Fredericks and what he's doing. He has taken what was done and just really elevated it to a whole nother level. So kudos to you. You've always had a strong commitment to minority and women-owned businesses and the whole ecosystem. So I love watching the news and seeing my partners in crime as business owners, well, not really crime, but my partners in business, bad reference, being featured on TV, which is really cool because that has not happened before. And since small businesses are responsible for the majority of jobs and provide a lot of economic impact in our city, state, and nation, it's nice to see us recognized for all the work that we do. So I have a really wonderful panel here this morning, and so I'm going to let you all briefly introduce yourselves, who you are, your what you do, and your organizations as well. So I'm going to start with you. I don't know. It might be on.
Is it on? Oh, it is on. Yeah, I just talk. That's super easy. Thank you.
Isn't that amazing?
I love it. So my name is Tiffany Hansen, and I'm going to be brief, but there's kind of three prongs to where I can contribute to this panel with the work that I do. The first is my role of Director of MBE Initiatives and Strategic Engagement with the Morales Group. So I'm really working on helping us to leverage our Minority Business Enterprise certification to gain more business, as well as kind of starting our own supplier diversity program. The second prong that I bring to the panel is I'm an entrepreneur myself. So I've had a consulting business for about 7 years. One of my more notable contracts was working as the Director of Marketing and Communications for Indie Pride for about 4 years. And then the third prong is some of the volunteer work I do in the community that may directly impact some of you. So examples would include volunteering for Indie Maven, which is a digital magazine that was created by women for women. I sit on their editorial board and also support their sister company Maven Space, which is a co-working space designed women for women. I also volunteer with the Women Equity Brunch Group and host regular events that support equity for women, including a lot of business owners in our community as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Morgan Allen. I am the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Manager for the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, which is a mouthful, so I'll say IEDC the rest of our panel today. I work to make Indiana's entrepreneurial ecosystem more equitable and accessible for all.
Good morning. My name is Rafael Sanchez. I'm the real Rafael Sanchez. The imposter who used to go by Ralph Sanchez, now Rafael because it's cool. He's on Channel 6. We're good friends. So I'm allowed to say this, and feel free to tell him that. I am Chief Impact Officer and Indianapolis Market President for Old National Bank. Really happy to be here at the Camille Blunt Love Fest. Yeah, thank you. No, but seriously, thanks to David and Ava for having me today. I really appreciate it. It's great to be with all the panelists, so thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Darren Henry. I'm a Dean's Fellow for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the Purdue University School of Business, and I also manage and direct the Dr. Cornell A. Bell Business Opportunity Program at Purdue University as well, in which Mr. Frederick's son is a student participant. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. So there's a whole love fest going on up here and out there and a lot of synergy. But I want to take a moment to remind us all what today's theme for this day of learning is, and it's entrepreneurship and the future. Because we know what entrepreneurship looks like right now while we're living it and breathing it and experiencing it. But I thought it would really be interesting to have this conversation talking about entrepreneurship in the future, to share some little tidbits with you that I found when doing some research. So Groupon, are you all familiar with Groupon? Groupon actually started out as it was a website that organizations used to donate money to nonprofits. Look what it is now. And Yelp, has anyone ever Yelped somebody or been Yelped? Well, it started out as a business search site for referrals, which it kind of still is, but it's morphed into something else. Well, we didn't always have Netflix, right? Well, we didn't always have Netflix, but when Netflix was first founded, for those of you all that care to date yourself, what was Netflix? We have a subscriber base, and we got DVDs in the mail, and we were so excited when that red envelope came, like, oh my God, my movies came. And remember that? But now, what is Netflix? It's a streaming service that comes right into our homes. Anyone use Slack for your companies? Well, Slack started out as a video game. Who knew? And we don't even talk about Instagram. Now, YouTube, you know what YouTube was before it was a video sharing platform? It was a video dating service. Wow. So look at how those businesses started and look at how they became, because the entrepreneurial landscape, it changes. And it's going to continue to change and continue to evolve. And we as business owners are going to have to evolve. And those of us that support the work that we do will have to evolve. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So the first question that I have, and you all can answer this at your own, I won't call on you like we're in school to my colleague from the university. You all can just jump in. But the first question that I have is, I'd like for you to talk about the changes that you've seen in your various areas over the past, because in order to know where we're going, we do have to look at our history. So looking backwards, what changes have you seen over the past several years?
Okay, I'll jump in. I'll be the brave one. So we're at a really, really exciting time in Indiana. We have an entrepreneur as our Secretary of Commerce, which has never happened before. And out of 5 key priority areas that he rolled out about a year and a half ago, entrepreneurship is top of his list. So at the state, we are heavily invested in entrepreneurship as economic development, as an economic development tool. So when you look historically about economic development, traditionally you think about industrial recruitment and how can we get the Cummins and the Cooks in the world to locate in communities and really do that neighborhood hiring that we were talking about earlier. And while that is really important to our economy, what we're finding at the state is that it's all of you that really makes the difference. You had mentioned this earlier, but entrepreneurs create the majority of net new jobs in our state. In 2019 alone, you all were responsible for creating over 36,000 net new jobs. And those are real jobs in communities that hire Hoosiers. And so that's something that I'm really excited about at the state, is that we're having this huge shift into supporting and investing in our own.
So how many of you went to the Engage Indiana breakfast yesterday? 2 people? So, yeah, you're going to hear largely some of the same things, because last time I checked, the data hasn't changed from yesterday to today that I shared, so it's still fresh. But so I agree that there's a lot of things to be optimistic about and positive about. I think that, unfortunately, sometimes something has to happen in this world for people to wake up. George Floyd, very tragic, but ever since then, you've just seen, this whole thing about D&I, to me, since I can remember, sort of ebbed and flowed up and down in life. It becomes a priority, then it kind of fades away, and then it becomes a priority, and then it kind of fades away. I think it's here to stay. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't fade a little bit, you know, but I'm just saying that the new normal is at a higher level than it ever has been before. Much like video conferencing is here to stay, right? Like COVID made us all learn how to Zoom and WebEx and all that. But you know the adage, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like, you know how many panels I've been on talking about diversity, and I look at the numbers and it's the same number. You know, we have to break that vicious cycle. We have to, and obviously it starts in this room, but it also falls on the shoulders of corporate leaders and actions that they have to take. No more checking the boxes. You know, no more performative, you know, acts. I think the world has caught on, right? I think consumers have caught on, investors have caught on. ESG, you know, didn't exist. I don't remember hearing about it, you know, 10, 15 years ago. Now it's ESG investing. It's a $27 trillion industry. $27 trillion people have invested in ESG funds, environmental social governance. You know, that's the sort of the new nomenclature for, you know, all things DE&I and doing the right thing. My daughter, who's soon to be 21 years old, my oldest, she cares so much about climate change and racial diversity and all these things, to the point where she will not consume food from a company that she does not believe holds her value. She will not buy goods. I think a generation older, the one that got Netflix in the mail, me.
Cannot relate.
Me too.
Me. And I'm sorry, pardon my French. I was so pissed when the DVD was scratched, and I had to send it back, and I wasted time. Anyway, you know, we were a little bit more lenient, I think. We just have to admit that we were a little bit more lenient. Well, if we liked the chicken, we still bought it. You know, I think this generation is not going to put up with that. But I think here's the alarming statistics that I think will frame our conversation for today too, which is the wealth gap. And you talked about it, Angela, which I think is spot on. You know, 2.4% of all businesses in the United States are black-owned businesses. That roughly equates to about 3 million businesses. Of those 3 million businesses, guess what percentage are considered non-employee firms? In other words, mom and pop. What percentage? This is interactive part. This is no. So 2.4%. So 3 million. So what percentage of the 3 million are mom and pops? So 94%. 94%. How are we going to build generational wealth? You know, I used to have a PowerPoint slide that dropped two numbers of, just visualize it. I'm not going to ask you to close your eyes because that would be weird. But imagine a 9 on one side and a 2 on the other side. And I ask you, which number is greater? 9, yeah. Feel free to shout out the answer if you know it. So 9. So now I drop another 9, sits right next to the 9. So now it's 99 versus 2. Which number is greater? Okay, now I drop 10 in front of that. So now it's 1099 and 2. Which number is greater? 1099. Okay, I know you guys need more coffee. But so then I drop the W in front of the 2. So now it's the W2, since the very beginning has always been smaller than a 1099. And what that basically is meant to encapsulate is that wealth is in business ownership. And don't feel bad if you're a W2 earner, because so am I. But 1099 is the way to go. We need to bring more 1099s into this world, starting with this room.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add on that subject?
So I wanted to contribute to that, and actually it kind of transitions perfectly with what you're talking about. I was doing some research about a presentation I'm going to be doing about generations and their differences in the workplace. And one of the things that I was doing was finding really successful people in the business world that are from different generations. And then it kind of occurred to me what kind of generationally how business owners have become successful, what industries are they a part of. It was interesting seeing kind of a lot of Gen X entrepreneurs are brick and mortar and goods and services. A lot of millennial, the more successful ones are in the tech sector, right? And we look at the future in Gen Z, and most of the Gen Z successful folks are people who are influencers, they're social media marketers, they're activists that are using social media, so people that are really learning how to live their business in the digital space. I think that kind of ties into when you're thinking about 1099 and W-2, we see a lot more younger people that don't want to put up with corporate BS and that don't feel comfortable in the corporations they work with. And they're like, I'll just go start my own company. I'll figure out how to make $70,000 a year by doing TikTok marketing, right? So we see a lot of younger people who are figuring out how to become solopreneurs or have those small businesses, becoming more 1099 folks, and who are just really figuring out how to leverage the digital world. I think that's going to continue.
I'm actually coming to you, Darren, in all honesty with so I don't mean to cut you off, but that brings me to you because this is what you do. You teach entrepreneurship. But there's a lot of people that think that you don't need to be taught entrepreneurship. You can learn it on the job, and that actually students after exiting high school should be given entrepreneurship as a pathway to employment versus a traditional college education. So I would love to hand this baton to you and let you talk about all of this with the work that you do.
Certainly, thank you. And I was coming back to the point you made about the wealth gap, which ties into your recent comments. For me, what I see on a campus, a STEM-based campus like Purdue University, especially when looking at minority students, that wealth gap can be translated back to the digital divide. And there's a lot of students, particularly minority students, especially in the business school, that their digital skills are lacking. You're seeing a lot of businesses being created on these college campuses from the coders, the data scientists, and students that have certain skill sets that minority students aren't getting starting in middle school and high school. And that is directly tied to this wealth gap that we see once those students become adults. In terms of what's being done at the university level, I see a lot of colleges and universities creating centers around entrepreneurship. We have one on Purdue's campus, and that center does two things. It actually helps the faculty members take what they're doing in the laboratories and bring that to market. So you're seeing a lot of older entrepreneurs, if you will, that are coming out of the academic sector. These businesses that are being born in laboratories. Purdue University is trying to take a lot of those patents, a lot of those ideas, and take it to market. But they're inviting the students to come along with that journey. And so there's a lot of colleges and universities that are teaching entrepreneurship because they know that these students need to see mentors, get involved in incubators and accelerators so that they're kind of exposed to it before they graduate and go on out to the real world.
Good point. So I have a lot of questions for our panelists, but I also know this is really about your time and questions you may have about entrepreneurship and the future. And we do have a lot of expertise on the panel. So I would like to pause for a moment. And does anyone have a question so far? Yes. Here she wasn't ready for me. I'm
pretty sure this is a health hazard.
I threw it off because normally questions are at the end. I apologize, Ava. But this is just such a great topic, so I don't want to miss the opportunity for dialogue.
Awesome. This question is more geared to Darren, and I know you're at the Purdue level, but when you talk about STEM, technology, and things of that nature, AI, drones, how can we get that at the high school level? Again, AI and drones are taking over. A lot of people don't realize that drones are actually delivering mail in some of the remote areas. They're saying in 5 years, we'll be getting our mail through drones. So think about the technology and kids and gaming. There are a lot of people in their mom's basement, playing games. Games are key. So if you can get them, reach them where they are. It's key, and that's the technology right now for the kids. So how can we get this kind of technology? We know it's coming. It's here. At a younger level for more institutes. You got Lawrence that has technology centers. You've got Washington Township that has technology centers. Introduce it. It's here.
Thank you.
I'll start and pass it to you. I think it has to be a partnership between everyone, between public and private. It has to be a partnership between the academic institutions in the high schools and the middle schools and the elementary schools. Everyone has to get involved in this, and I think it's a national issue, to be honest with you, as well. But everyone has a part in doing just that.
Yeah, and I think the core question here is how do you train kids for jobs that don't exist yet, and that you have no idea what even the possibilities are, and how do you make sure that those resources and services are equitably shared in our education network? Because you brought up great examples of technology centers, but you don't see those in every high school or every middle school. Carmel, Center Grove, tons of resources. But that's not enough. And so something that we think a lot at the state is how do we prepare people for those jobs that don't exist yet? A lot of that is entrepreneurial mindset. So there's a program called Innovate Within. It is the largest high school pitch competition in the United States. So really the core issue that program drives is teaching kids entrepreneurial mindset, because if you don't know what is going to exist in 10 years, let's at least teach kids to see problems as opportunities. So that's a core piece of what we're working on at the state. And Indiana First Robotics is another really great program that does have statewide representation, and they're bringing those like hard tech STEM skills to high schools and middle schools throughout the state of Indiana.
You know, I think if the drone had delivered my Netflix DVD, maybe it would not have been scratched. But don't look now. But that's entrepreneurial thinking in action, right? I mean, and I agree with you 100%. It's a it sounds like a public-private partnership opportunity. I actually think it gets a lot more basic than that. Like, we don't even teach financial literacy. People don't even know. Yeah, people don't even know how to, write a check or how the whole money system works, and so how we're gonna spark that if they can't even know the basics about financial. We're working and talking at Old National with schools and coming in, and other banks are doing it too. So it's not like we're the only ones doing it, but. You're going into seniors. I would say too, it's too late. I mean, I think they have to be talking about this in middle school and learning how to save money, learning the value of money, learning how to balance the checkbook, and learning all these things. And then we can talk about STEM, and we can talk about all these other things. But to me, somebody in this room can figure out a program, put it together, pitch it to a few corporations. You get seed funding to get it started, and then you start scaling that thing. And that is the very essence of entrepreneurial thinking. So I'd love to come back next year and see who in this room actually did it and is successful, because that is exactly the kind of thinking that we need.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything? Okay, so wait, go ahead.
5 seconds. Also,
Oh,
just teaching young students the basics, like he said, but critical thinking skills.
Oh, yes.
And communication. By the time I get them in college, or by the time you get them at IUPUI,
Yeah.
you're kind of amazed at how many students don't have these basic
That's very
thinking
true.
and communication skills.
They're great at texting and snapping, but
Oh, yes, that's very true. Both of us are at the university level, and it's interesting looking at these young people that are going to come and work in our businesses, and it's tough. It's tough, and I think one of the curveballs that they were thrown, and we were also thrown, was COVID. Because those 2 years, many of them, particularly my freshmen, they spent their, 2 of their high school years, those years where you lost those rites of passage, like prom, graduation, homecoming, dating, sports, the clubs. They lost all of that. So their social skills are pretty bumpy right now. And so I guess, how will COVID impact, how has COVID impacted and will continue to impact the entrepreneurial landscape, particularly for, our minority-owned businesses, with respect to hiring and sustainability as well?
I'll start on this one. One thing, obviously, everybody is familiar, at least very generally, with the Great Resignation. And I think what happened was a lot of people, one, saw the capabilities to work remotely, and as more businesses and corporations started to accept that and roll that into their regular practices, you saw a lot more people that were like, well, if I can work from home and I can do anything I want to do, what does that look like for me for the future? Just in the past 2 months, I've had 2 friends who are director level positions at their company who've left the company to start their own. One is going to be a life coach, and the other one is doing contract copywriting work. And like people that were in very solid positions are just like, but I want to do my own thing. I want to work half the time. I want to charge 3 times what I would have been charged my hourly wage at the job that I was with, and I want to be able to make my own schedule. So I see more opportunities for folks in a lot of those administrative positions. Virtual assistants are a really big opportunity right now for a lot of folks, where people are just figuring out, oh, I can just do things from my kitchen table or from my home office or from a co-working space. So I see more and more of those opportunities coming up. And again, probably more solopreneurship, but then sometimes those build as well.
Good point. Yes. I'm sorry, she covered. Okay.
Question. Okay. And Raphael and I were discussing this earlier this morning. The virtual and remote working is wonderful, but at the same time, it's counterintuitive to building critical thinking skills, engagement, and networking, because those are key components to being successful. Now, I come from a different generation, but I still think that there are some elements of life skills that just need to be. And so I'm going to push back on you a little bit, Tiffany.
And I'll push right back on you, girl. But then you see more organizations like Indie Maven and Maven Space creating more spaces for solopreneurs or for entrepreneurs to be able to come together. They host a ton of regular programming that does that development, that provides educational opportunities. They host networking events. So I think before COVID, because I've been doing business development for a long time, there were a lot of networking events where it's a lot of salespeople that are just putting their business cards in other salespeople's hands, right? So now we're just getting more honed in on the specific type of networking that we need to do. And there's more spaces just like this that are created intentionally for the very specific type of networking we need to do, so we can just be smarter about it. So a good entrepreneur will be able to leverage those opportunities to find more work-life balance instead of, Raphael, I know you're out in the community all the time. Instead of always being out, being able to hone in on things that are much more specific to your area.
I'm going to echo what Tiffany has said, because I too serve on the operations board for Indie Maven and Maven Space. And what has happened is there is a culture that has redefined what success looks like and redefine that pathway to success. Because just because they're not networking, remember the water cooler and the bulletin board? You'd be hard to find a bulletin board or in someone's break room with stuff all over it. Well, there was a time where that's where organizations put everything, because it forced everyone to go to that location in their company and they would interact with each other. Remember the printer? Like, people had a printer in their office, and that was another, like, hey, what you doing for lunch place where you would meet up at the am I the only one that used the big dinosaur printer? Like, that was the other space. And so a lot of companies now don't have printers anymore because we don't print. In fact, in my company, the only person that does print is who? Me. So no one's meeting me at the printer. So what has happened is society has forced us to redefine that pathway for interaction. And so, as Tiffany has said, a lot of the co-working spaces, it's a big kind of, pardon my language, a turn up in those places. Like, people are talking to one another, they're eating lunch with one another, they're talking to, it's amazing. So I think that we as entrepreneurs and those that provide those resources to entrepreneurs, we too have to evolve and realize how we did it was great for us, but there are new needs and perspectives and opportunities also that will redefine that pathway, and we need to get on board with it and just understand that we did it, it was great, but let's try something new, because I love co-working spaces myself. They're so much fun.
I'm sorry. I was very intentional in doing what I did, because that exclamation point to that is, for me, working intergenerationally is the bomb.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay, because everybody, because they're the new generation. We have and know what we know. Okay, but when you bring the two together, it's a phenomenal opportunity.
Yeah, I was going to referee this match with, between Tiffany and Ava, and then Denise jumped in, and then they're ganging up on Ava, and so now I'm going to go with Ava. So you guys swayed my mind as I'm sitting here. I do agree. Listen, I tend to be more old school. I think the magic happens when we're together. And I think that Zoom and WebEx and Teams and all that is great, and it really should be a backup plan, and not the primary form of business, especially if you're in the relationship business. While it's fun to find out that somebody you met only on Zoom is actually 6'7", I'll take interacting with human beings face to face any day of the week, and I worry about what happens to culture when everybody kind of just flocks to their Zoom environment, and you may, there's always a joke about Rafael, how do you start a small business? And I said, well, start a big one and wait 6 months, but like if you start, I'm not supposed to laugh at my own jokes, but when you start a business and you're thinking about growing it, you have to start thinking about culture too, and what do you want your business to stand for? So I don't think that isolating ourselves within the confines of our home, or maybe occasionally you go to a co-working space, and maybe I'm not being open-minded about it, but I do think that there's something to be said about knowledge transfer that occurs by observing others, do the work, talk to people. That's how I grew up. That's how I learned. And I fear that if we swing too far the other way, we're going to lose a lot of that.
I don't disagree. I think you need a hybrid. I think you need a little bit of both. It's like cooking. There are several ingredients to get you to the finish line with that dish that you want. So I think you can't say, no, we can't be virtual. And yes, I think you have to find that middle ground and what's best for your organization and your line of business. I can imagine the work that you do. You would want to be. You're in banking. I need to see you and talk to you and touch you as my banker. Like that, but in some industries.
I mean, we have rules about touching, but yeah, no, I mean, it's.
I hate you so.
This session is being recorded.
You go to your room until I send for you, young man.
Sorry, apparently I came without filter today.
Well, and if I'm able to jump in here, I'm on the millennial Gen Z bridge. And so depending on what audience I'm talking to, sometimes I'm a millennial, sometimes I'm Gen Z because it makes me hip. Today I will be a millennial. I do think that there is a burden on our millennial and our Gen Z workforce to make space for the in-person meetings and making sure that we develop those in-person relationships, because the values are just different. And I think when I'm mentoring young women in the workforce, our Gen Zers, and they say, well, I just want to work from home and never go in person. I don't need to go to networking events. I can just do everything over Zoom. It's like, yeah, you can, but that's not going to set you up for success. So while you can do the work virtually, and while companies are shifting towards remote work, there is a responsibility for your long-term career success and that relationship building to show up and make space for those conversations.
I think it's
that
like quiet.
We're 3-2. We're winning.
I'm sorry.
Well, no.
No, she was
So-
in the middle.
No,
She
you already
was-
spoke. You already
I'm the
spoke.
moderator. I'm the moderator.
I'm bridging the divide
Right,
here.
yeah. But,
It's
I mean,
intentional connection.
What's the same model as the quiet quitting? Someone asked me about quiet quitting, and I said, well, if you quiet quit, do I have the right to loudly fire you? So it's like, we have to, I was kidding. We were having a joke in the office, but that's very real. But there's a new culture now, because if you quietly quit, then I'm no longer investing in you. So therefore, I'm not loudly firing you. You're firing yourself. I'm just doing it quietly too. So, I mean, there is a shift in the culture. If you don't want to do certain things that are required, then just be prepared for what the outcome will be. So I think we had another question.
Just a comment. So I am allowed to work 2 days from home, 3 days in the office. I choose to only work 1 day from home because I either need to be all in or, one place or the other. On that Friday when I work from home, starting at the first of the year, I'm going to start going to the AMP at 16 Tech or other places and not sitting in my apartment, which is fine. I can get a lot of work done, but I want to be out and about, get my coffee at the AMP, go to the city market, not go into the city county building, because actually this Friday I have a meeting. And the person said, would you like to meet at the city county building? And I said, that's my day out of the office to work from home. And if I go in the office and I'm going to be there all day long. So I said, I will come to you at your place of business and meet with you and have that conversation. So using it to do not just work from home, but to get out and about, especially if you're a salesperson, which I'm not anymore, thank goodness. But, when you need to connect with folks, that's one of the best ways, in my opinion, to go out and do that.
And what this is called is ecosystem development. So it's getting connected with the right resource at the right time in your journey. And part of that means showing up to different spaces and meeting someone that you don't know. So you're never going to get help unless you ask for it. And so it's showing up to the Maven space and the AMP, come across the street to the Emerging Manufacturing Collaboration Center. That's where I am. That's the power of ecosystem development. And what we have actually been able to show is that communities with high levels of local connectedness, so people getting connected to the right resource at the right time in your journey, you actually accelerate quarterly revenue growth twice as fast. So it also makes business sense for you to get out of your office and to show up in community spaces.
So there's a question up towards the top with Lamar. So while Ava's headed that way, I'd like to survey the audience, and this is not to put anyone on the spot whatsoever, but for those of you all that do have your businesses, who does have an office space? By a show of hands. And though not even half. And so who does not have an office space and works from home? So what I'm saying is like going into a physical structure when I say, because I have a home office. But I'm saying a physical structure outside of your place of residence. So again, who has an office space outside of their place of residence?
That's not a co-working space.
Who goes to a co-working space? Who works at home? It's like a mix. It's a mix. So for those of you all that work from home, would you say you go 1, 2, 3, 5 days without interacting with others?
In person.
In person, not over a Zoom. Anyone go 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? So we're saying on average it's 3 days without interacting with a human being within your line of business, not over a Zoom. Interesting.
For those of you who work from home, how many of you are 100% productive? Oh, come on.
Oh.
Go, bye. Bye.
Oh.
I was checking for honesty. I obviously didn't get it.
Oh, okay. Now, Christmas is around
Jimmy,
the
I know
corner.
better.
And some of you all going to wake up with coal in your stocking for that one. So, Lamar, go ahead. It's on you.
Yeah, thank you. I had more of a statement. So, Tiffany, right? So, I'm one of someone who was in a director position at a nonprofit. Said, hey, I want to step out, do my own thing, and I'm now at a co-working space. I'm at 16 Tech, and that space actually has been amazing. I've only been here for 2 weeks, but the fact that I was able to get out, get to talk to people, get to know people, I actually ran into someone that I did work with in the nonprofit that I was working at, and they were shocked that, hey, wow, you went out on your own and, you're actually here. And she looked at me and she said, you want a client? It's like, okay, yeah, sure. So, yeah, absolutely. So just met with that client yesterday, and I will be sending her a project proposal to do work together. So just a testament to that co-working space. You never know who you're going to run into. You never know who you're going to talk to increase your business.
Good point.
Well, and I think the moral of the story, the culture is changing. We just have to be intentional about how we're changing with it, right? So even
Right.
if you are working from home, then be intentional about attending 2 networking events a month that are relevant to your business, right? You don't have to be out all the time. Even I have a friend of mine who owns her own consulting business, and she has 3 teammates who are all 1099. And she wants to give them all the space and autonomy just to get their work done. She doesn't micromanage very purposefully. She's like, just go live your life. Well, they asked her, because they were yearning for it. The one thing that we want is to get together socially and to build relationships with each other. That was their one request from her for the year. So I think as we're all trying to kind of feel this out, you have people that are learning what they need and just being more intentional about how they're spending time in person with people.
Any additional question? Yes. He said
We're filming.
And while Ava runs up their local connectedness at work, I'm right across the parking lot from you in EMC squared, so pop by and say hi.
great idea.
I recognize that there's that the culture's changing, the business scene is changing as such, but obviously there's a lot going on that's going to always have to be in person, right? I'm a demolition contractor. I am not going to remotely demolish a building.
And nor would we want you
Nor
to
would you
either,
want me to,
so
right,
let's
exactly.
Let's
so
be clear.
as far as the communication skills, the interpersonal skills and things like that, there's always going to be a need for, I mean, we spoke about the construction industry, a lot of us are in that. That is a very personal, in-person industry, right? So we're only and I don't know what the statistics are, but we're only talking about a certain percentage that could ever be remote business, versus all the industry and such that is very much in person and public and such. So I'm curious, because it feels like in conversations like this that there's just this huge wave of new business and new opportunity that's all remote and such, but it just can't be that way for always, right? I'm not going to build a building, demolish a building, whatever, remotely. There's a lot of things that can't be. So if you could maybe speak to that, like I don't even know what the percentages or the numbers are of new entrepreneurs that are actually working from home only, or the new businesses, the new construction companies, the new people that that really do need that in-person interaction for their companies to be recognized and known and to be able to be the next, construction company that's building the next big building.
So I don't have the specific numbers, not off the top of my head at least, but I will say what we see from the data is that the majority of new entrepreneurs are actually in traditional business paths. So it's not virtual, it's not tech, it's not venture-backed. Venture-backed businesses actually make up less than 1% of Indiana's business population, but it's the sexiest thing. So when I show up and I talk to a group or I'm sitting on a panel, it's like, okay, let's talk about tech and venture. But what the data shows, that's not the majority of the people that we're trying to serve. So I don't have the specific numbers for you, but I will say, new entrepreneurs are still going into traditional business paths.
And I would say it's more about how people are using the digital space. So a friend of mine owns a brick and mortar boutique down on Mass Ave. She originally was trying to staff that with employees so that they were open during traditional business hours full time. She started figuring out how to leverage Instagram and to do way more sales online than she was doing in person and really take advantage of that. Now she just staffs it, but she staffs at the hours that she wants to, 4 days a week, and that's it. And it's like she's got the brick and mortar and she has to be in person, but she's finding digital avenues to bring in revenue as well. And then even in construction companies, you hire contractors that could do different services for you that do work remotely. Could you have a CPA that manages your books remotely, or virtual assistants or things like that? So I think it's more about how we're navigating the digital world in different ways to be more productive, talking about productivity, and to be able to find more work-life balance for our employees so that when you do have to be in person a lot more, it's hyper-focused and intentionally very productive.
I'll sort of be the grouchy old school guy role on this panel. First of all, I think you've been successfully remotely detonating buildings, because if you were inside the building, we wouldn't be talking to you right now. But I totally get what you're saying. You know, how many of you have been to a restaurant lately? And I'm going to go back to even younger, like kids. Like, we're talking about people who are now like thinking about launching businesses. But I think the problem lies even before that, while they're still in school. But how many times you go to a restaurant, the whole family's sitting there, everybody's on their phones. My kids will not call me, yell at my name or whatever. If they could be in the house a bedroom away, and I'll get a text. How many of you get that? I mean, so the problem is that we don't translate that into how that's going to like creep up into the business world. So I think it's our responsibility as parents, our responsibility as corporate leaders, to instill the value of face-to-face networking, the value of building relationships, getting to know one another, not through a device. I think smartphones have a lot to do with this. I think they've just conditioned our children to think along those lines. Now it's snapping. If I see one of my kids take a picture real quick and send it off, and that's all they do, it's a picture of their face, and their kids see it, and it's a streak. And I don't understand the value of it or what the purpose is. It's horrible. It's the same picture like every so often minutes, and it goes off of. You guys understand this? Because
You get
I don't,
a flame next to their name. That's the cool part.
Yeah, but it's like they do this. They just take a picture. Like, well, don't you send like a message along with that? No, Dad. No, nobody does that. I'm like, so people just get a picture of your face. That's networking right now, and I don't understand it. I don't know how it's going to lead. I worry about the future a little bit, about if we don't educate our children about how things get done in the real world. I wonder what that's going to look like in the future.
I do have to make this comment because I've been looking at Tiffany's shoes the entire morning. And when you get on some of these college campuses, there's a lot of students that have their own sneaker businesses, their own online sneaker businesses. I have a student that makes 6 figures in revenue from his online sneaker business. I spoke with him last night trying to prepare for this panel, and he mentioned, going back to COVID, that COVID helped him with new opportunities of finding customers. So when everyone was at home, they were online looking for how they were going to get sneakers like Tiffany's. They found his company, and his sales exploded. He has great product, so that word of mouth kicks in, and his sales are continuously going through the roof. And so it does depend on the nature of the business, but I do think that a lot of these sole proprietors have had a field day with some of the opportunities presented by COVID.
Good point. So we just did a whole photo shoot, by the way, Raphael, while you were talking. So we just did. You participated in a photo shoot.
A photo shoot?
Okay. Any questions? Does anyone have a question for the panel? Yes. As Ava gets her steps in, all the way up to the top. Oh, okay. We'll come up to.
I'm sorry, raise your hand again
Just wait.
for me.
Yes. We took your picture while you were talking.
Do it for the streak.
There will be no snapping of my photo.
Smile, you're on candid camera. For you, young man, what's the gentleman studying in school now then? He's making
He's actually studying supply chain and operations management. He's become so large, he needs a warehouse. And so he's studying to learn about how to, handle large inventories.
I'll give him my card. I'll get him a warehouse.
I'll forward that to him.
But no, again, he's making 6 figures a year, but he's smart enough to realize that that's not going to carry him through the rest of his life. So he's got to put together a plan, get that degree or get that certification, and then take it from there, which is very smart, obviously.
Well, and it sounds like he's building something. So we were talking about generational wealth. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of influencers and activists in Gen Z, but there's a lot of people who are figuring out, again, how to leverage those platforms to build something much larger. And then you get tools from, universities to be able to create generational wealth for your family. So I see those opportunities changing, and there's just more of them now.
And I think, Camille.
One of the things that I think is a really good point here, especially to Raphael's point, because I'm a similar leader the way you are, old school printing. Oh, I need to hold things. I need to feel them. But I think the important point here is to surround yourself with the people who know how to do, Instagram and Facebook, so you can have an online presence, someone to manage your website, someone to do all of the things that you don't specialize in. And I think as small business owners, those are the things that you need to be aware of, are the things that you may not be good at, and that's okay. But surround yourself with the people who know how to do the things that you are not good at.
Or that you're apprehensive about doing it. Because just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's wrong. And a lot of times when we don't understand things, then we automatically just dismiss it. And so do some self-exploration and come to terms with your feelings about something and really be able to identify what it is. Is it just the fear of the unknown? And be open to learning and handing the reins over to someone that can do that for you, because you would be surprised at the return that you would see if you, as the leader, got out of the way and let your teams do that work.
Well, and to the point that was made earlier, construction is always going to be in person. That healthcare is always, well, not always in person, but there will always have to be an in-person component. You can't do surgery virtually yet. But it's how can you use tech and the tools available to you to make yourself more efficient, to make sure that you're serving a wider audience. Like if you're not using QuickBooks Online, what are you doing? And it's bringing in people to your team that are comfortable with that, and will help you grow and expand.
Yeah, and I think, and just to be clear, I'm not anti-tech. I think tech has a place. I'm just sort of anti-tech if it's tech all the time, unless you're a digital company or, you're in a space that's appropriate, right, that's necessary. I just think that if you're in the relationship business, if you're in the personal services space, for you to just be online and on Zoom. Look, the question I guess then becomes, is your business, is not whether your business is viable. Your business may be viable, but you may be part of the statistic of the 94% mom and pop. And if you're okay with that and you're happy with that, that's fine. Nobody's judging you. But we're sitting here trying to create generational wealth in underrepresented communities, and that means creating big businesses too. And if you want to scale that company, you're going to have to come out from behind the Zoom. That's just the bottom line.
Good point.
And to piggyback off of that, I've seen so many more good learning opportunities and mentorship programs. Denise just celebrated graduating from the Eli Lilly mentorship program specifically for diverse suppliers. There's programs like Pass the Torch for Women that mentor both just professional women in W-2 roles and entrepreneurs. Raphael and I are going to be attending the Indiana Latino Institute Leadership Circle tonight, which is specifically for Latino professionals. So my point is that there's a lot of mentorship programs that you can participate in that are going to help you learn those things about your business, learn who you can connect with to potentially outsource those things, but then also create those strong networks of referral partners and potential clients as well. So for all the small business owners in the room, I would highly suggest looking for those types of programs to participate in, because there's so many more of them, and they're becoming more niche, so that you can be very intentional about your time.
So I would love to keep this conversation going on, because I think that we could probably just go into so many different lanes with this, but I'm getting the signal over to my right that we need to start landing the plane. And so I would like for each one of our panelists to leave. What did you want?
One thing.
Okay.
So
I was handing it off.
Chelsea had a question, so I'm going to let Chelsea ask her.
Oh, go ahead, Chelsea.
And
I'm
then
sorry.
afterwards, I have the last question.
Oh, you have a question? Okay, because I was going to leave.
everybody.
Okay, cool. I was going to let you make final comments, but you had a question. Okay, awesome. Okay. I got my signals confused. I apologize.
So I guess it's not so much of a question, but more of a comment. I think I agree with Raphael in the sense of it's through all of this, it sounds like there's a fine line between efficiency and convenience. And the generational gaps are trying to find the balance between those, and that's where things get a little bit difficult, because the person that I work with, who happens to be my mentor, is in a different generation gap, and she drives me insane. But I understand why she does it. whereas I do things a lot different. So I agree, and I think it's just a matter of finding a level balance between the two so that they don't become a big issue.
Good point. Thank you, Chelsea. It's good to see you.
Are there any other questions?
We have one, and then we'll come to Director Fredericks. Ava, you're really getting your steps in today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Caleb Keys with United Nations, All Nations Investment Group. The biggest thing, I'm about to go read to the kids, so I got to get out of here, but my couple team members are inside of the crowd. How do we close this gap? How do we actually do the action versus just in this room talking about it? The biggest thing that I heard today is about financial literacy. Financial literacy is the most important things that we need to be teaching either in the middle school and in the high school. Also trades, versus the generations back then, not trying to call anybody old, but the generations back then.
You just did.
So the generations back then used to have carpentry, you had HVAC, you had all these different things inside of the schools, and there's no more of that. Or, we need to be teaching these things. So how do we start from here? I'll be back after I read to the kids, but how do we push this further from just talking and actually getting the action? And what does that look like?
It sounds like a great entrepreneurial opportunity. Viewing problems as opportunities. I mean, that's entrepreneurial mindset at its core. And so if you see something, do something. And you don't have to do it alone. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs make this lonely, but it doesn't have to be. You just have to ask for help. Meet someone that you don't know today. Say, here's what I'm doing, and see how they can help. You really just have to take action and do something. And it has to be, public-private partnership. It can't just be the government coming in and saying, teachers, you have to teach yet one more thing and not get paid to do it. It has to be a partnership.
I will, and working with our office, collaboration.
Yeah.
2023, we have several things on the agenda to address just what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So, what time will you be back? Well, no worries, but if you have a team member here, so we will make sure that we connect and we can talk about and address, because yes, that's a question that we ask ourselves every day.
But it also starts with coming to things like this.
Exactly.
Because if you sit, this goes back to, and I'm supporting the juvenile delinquent down the way and being in person, but when you come to things like this, you do have the chance to network and connect with others and communicate your concerns or needs or observations, and then someone hears that and says, I can help you. But if you're sitting in your home, in your office with the door shut in front of your computer, for day after day after day after day, then you miss out. Look at the empty seats that are here right now and the pearls that were dropped over this past hour. So it's coming to things like this. That's where it starts. Now, how it evolves is with what you do with what you heard. So that's the next step. So, Director Fredericks, I'm going to give it to you.
So real quickly, this is meant to be the last question, but it's also meant for you guys to sort of think quickly on your feet and give us like a quick answer. So if we had a time machine and you could go back in time, whether it's you as an educator, you as a business supporter, the two of you as business owners, go back in time to that moment before the light bulb clicked and you knew that this was what you were going to be doing. What piece of knowledge would you share with yourself then to help you now? So for me, I'll give you an example. Probably 15, 20 years ago, I would have loved to have understood the importance of networking, because truly everything flows through that. So if you had that opportunity to go back there, and let's say for you, before you started working at Purdue doing the BOP program, but you knew you were sort of going down that lane, what would be the one thing that you would tell yourself to say, you need to either think about this, study this, prepare for this? What would that be?
I'll go first because I already know it. I would tell myself that it's never too late. So I'm halfway through a PhD program. I thought I was too old to do that, but it's never too late. I do have a nonprofit that I started with my brother, my best friend. It's never too late. We started that business a couple of years ago. It's never too late. And there's a lot of things that I didn't think I could do a couple of years ago and 10, 15 years ago because I thought I was too old. I thought it was too late. But if I could go back and give myself some advice, that's exactly what it would be, is that it's never too late to accomplish any of your goals and any of your dreams.
Two things. One is get outside of your own comfort zone network. You know, if you're Latino and you're only hanging out with Latinos, if you're black and you're only hanging out with black people, you know, women only hanging out in women events, I think it's self-limiting. I think part of it is getting out of that and getting other people to know you and your company and what you're all about, and that's how you're going to grow. Not saying don't hang out with your brethren, but I'm just saying that expand your network. But two is don't be pigeonholed. Don't allow yourself to be pigeonholed. I started my career in banking for 3 years, went to law school, became a lawyer, became a partner at a law firm, practiced law for 14 years, then went to a printing company for 1 year, left the law practice, was VP of Business Development and Legal Affairs, then ran Indianapolis Power and Light for 2.5 years. Then ran the private bank for Old National for 4 years, now Chief Impact Officer and Indianapolis Market President. So if you ever need a lawyer to sue an employer because you got injured because you were working a printing machine and the power went out, I'm your guy. So my point is, like, my career has been anything but a straight line, and there are a lot of transferable skill sets, both in leadership, and if you can manage a P&L, and you can read financial statements, and you can analyze, and you can strategize, you can do it. And so don't let anybody tell you that you can't. You chart your own course. It's amazing things will happen.
Ask for help when you need it. Or even if you don't know you need it, still ask for help. I feel like we have this cultural dichotomy where on one hand, people think they need to put their nose down, do the work, and not talk about the work they're doing. And then on the other hand, Hoosier hospitality, we have this natural inclination towards neighborliness and wanting to help each other. So you have a ton of people that are putting their nose down, trying to do it alone, and then a ton of people that want to help and want to support you. But when we don't ask for help, those things aren't connected. And so I'll say it again, meet someone you don't know today and ask for help.
I have two short ones as well. One that really correlates with yours is you don't have to do it alone. There's a ton of programs like OMWBD, mentioned those mentorship programs, there's entrepreneurship centers, there's all sorts of opportunities for you to learn things. So if you're like, oh, I don't know how to run my books or whatever it is, there's all sorts of programming in person and online for you to learn those things. The other thing is to know your worth. I think that was something that was a lesson for me and a lesson for a lot of the young entrepreneurs that I see just getting started. Do some research, find out what your friends who are in the same space are charging, make sure that your rates are quality, and don't compromise those rates just because you want to earn business with someone. Know solidly what your worth is and be able to speak to that.
For me, I think it's everything that everyone has said times 100. And also, don't fall victim to imposter syndrome. I think that we all go through that as business owners where you think you are not fill in the blank. And real story, several years ago, I was selected as an Indianapolis Business Journal Woman of Influence. And when I was sitting at the ceremony, I wanted to run out of the building because I was like, oh my gosh, when they show my picture on the screen and read my bio, someone's going to scream fraud. So, and like, that's not true. I'm not a fraud. Like, you know, so, but I think sometimes we think we're not worthy or we just are not good enough. You are better than you think you are or giving yourself credit for. That's why people are giving you business. So don't fall victim to imposter syndrome. So thank you all. Thank you to our panelists for joining us this morning. This was a great conversation. I hope you all gleaned something from it. Thank you to Ava. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Denise.